Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Zen and Zazen class. I think in a minute or so, Schwen will also join us. And then we will start. Kenza-san, thank you for the talk the other day.
The pleasure was all mine.
I
Thank
think
you.
I need to switch to my laptop phone. For those of you who don't know, Kenza and I had a very interesting talk on, I think it was Friday. You can find it on my YouTube channel if you're interested.
After that, I kept thinking of the line from Hamlet of, words, words, words. Too many words.
Well, what are you supposed to do on YouTube?
I know.
Yeah. But on these Monday classes, I enjoy the 30 minutes without talking much more than the 30 minutes afterwards. But if I later upload this stuff to YouTube, and when I look what people watch, they skip over the 30 minutes and they start to watch on minute 31 or so. Nobody's interested in the silence. Half an hour. Swen-san, good evening. Thank you for having us here. So once more, welcome. Today I will talk about To You, page, I think 46. It's chapter 8 that we start with today. But before that, let's sit silently for half an hour. And those who only come for the words need to come back in 30 minutes. Thank you for joining. So today I would read some quotes from Sawaki Roshi's To You, chapter 8, which is page 46 in the printed version. The title of the chapter is To You Who Are Sobbing Because Somebody's Put One Over on You. At some point, you've got to slap yourself in the face and seriously ask yourself, is your personal gain or loss really worth being overwhelmed by joy and suffering? And the next one, sooner or later, everyone starts thinking of nothing besides themselves. You say, that was good. But what was good? It was only good for you personally. That's all. And the next one. Why is it that we humans are so exhausted? It is the constant effort to gain a little advantage that exhausts us. And another one. Illusion means being unstable. Illusion means being controlled by the situation. Maybe for the time being until here. I don't know how it is with you. If these words, these quotes by Sawaki Roshi wouldn't have a strong impact on myself, I wouldn't have decided to translate them into English, and before that, more than 20 years ago, I translated them to German. On Friday, when I had a talk with Kenza, she said that her first contact with Zen was actually the French translation of exactly this book, Artois. But to be completely honest, recently, when I read these books, these quotes, it's more like I think, oh, again, that story again. Because it's basically what I've been repeating over and over again, this metaphor of the game. Ever since we are able to say I, ever since we learn tomorrow is another day, we compare ourselves to the others, to our siblings. We learn that our parents are also only human beings. We try to collect points. We try to gain attention. We try to get ahead. And what happens is exactly what Sawaki Roshi says here. We cry because somebody put one over on us. But here he's asking in the first quote, well, slap yourself in the face. Probably doesn't mean it literally, but in the old days, for example, in China, Lin Chi, who in Japanese is called Rinzai, he used this method of slapping his students from time to time. And what happens in that moment is you wake up to something that's outside the game, or to the reality that's taking place before you start to play the game. You wake up to this sensation, this moment, that nobody, how do you say, couldn't exchange it. And it doesn't have to be a slap in the face. It could be a sip of tea. It could be going to the toilet, taking a meal. Nobody can do that for you. Or maybe the easiest example, this 30 minutes of sitting. Right now there's 14 people here, and each of us in a way did 30 minutes of Zazen. But the 30 minutes that I did, nobody could replace that. Nobody could be a substitute. And the same is true for your Zazen. And this reality of this Zazen, or the reality of this life experience, you can't multiply it. So just because it's 14, it doesn't mean that one person's Zazen multiplied by 14, even it would be hundreds or thousands or 10,000s that would join us on Zoom. It would still be this one reality. There's no multiplication possible, there's no comparison possible. Sometimes, maybe in the beginning, you ask yourself, well, my Zazen isn't something special, but when I get to the point of Muho, it must be a very special experience, those 30 minutes that Muho is experiencing. But you can't compare it. Or we often compare our Zazen to last week's Zazen. Last week it was good, today it was not so good, whatever. But in reality, how can you compare that? Comparison is only possible in the game, and you feel good if you have the feeling, oh, today it was good, better than usual. But no. Zazen means to use Sawaki's metaphor, slap yourself in the face. How can you compare this sensation in this moment to when yesterday somebody slapped you in the face? So in a way it's the same thing that Sawaki Roshi has been repeating over and over again, the same thing that I try to explain with the metaphor of quitting the game, taking a break from the game, whatever. But it's important to remind us, well, how important that is. That it can be actually a life-changing change of perspective if until then you have been only living inside the game. Sooner or later, everyone starts thinking of nothing besides themselves. And here Sawaki Roshi means nothing besides being a player in the game, and you only think about that one player. You say that was good, but what was good? It was only good for you personally. You gain points, but who cares about that? Why are we so exhausted? Because we constantly make an effort to try to gain just a little advantage, what people call the rat race, what I call the game. Running in the hamster wheel. And we are not even getting ahead. We are not even getting ahead. Nothing changes the fact that the game is gonna end when we die. So what's the point of exhausting ourselves? Illusion means being unstable. Illusion means being controlled by the situation. Seeing nothing outside of the game. Probably today there's also no Chinese translation, is that right? Okay, so let me do 2 or 3 more. Page 47, a person with big desires is easily fooled. Even the greatest conman can't profit from a person with no desires. If you want to gain, you will do anything for a chance to make another win. But, well, as Janis Joplin sung, and it's actually Chris Christopherson song, freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. If you have no interest at all in profits, making profits, if you don't want to gain, you're completely free. Nobody can fool you. That's the greatest freedom. To not be interested in gains. And the next quote, Buddhism means no self, nothing to gain. You must be one with the universe and all living beings. And then maybe the next one, last one for the day, non-self means not turning your back on people. These 2 quotes, here Sawaki Roshi says something very important. I'm repeating this, taking a break from the game over and over again. So stopping to compare yourself with the others, stopping to collect points, and also when you do Zazen, not making the mistake of saying, I do Zazen in order to gain enlightenment or to become a more mindful person, to be more relaxed, to be more peaceful, whatever. So you shouldn't do that. Of course, you can do it, but it's not a good idea, because the idea was to take a break from the game, and now Zazen becomes a part of the game. I want to be a more peaceful person. And you start to compare yourself. How was I last year? Am I a more peaceful person this year? And you try to be even more peaceful. But what Sawaki Roshi says here is also important. Taking a break from the game doesn't mean that you forget about all of the rest of the people, the other players, so to speak. In a way, it means to step outside, but then that's what I say, you play again. You return to the play table, but you play in a more playful way. I've been repeating this over and over again, but I say it once more. In English, we have the words game and play. In German, it's more complicated because there's only one word, Spiel. And Spiel can mean game and it can mean to play. So when people ask me in German, what do you mean with you take a break from the Spiel, but then you return to the Spiel? It's easier to explain in English. You take a break from the game, you return to the game, but you play it in a more playful way. It's not about gaining points anymore. It's about enjoying playing the game. And also, how do you say, teach others how to enjoy playing the game more. So I think that's what Sawaki Roshi tries to say here. You must be one with the universe and all living beings. It's not that you cut the ties to the game. I'm totally detached. That's what maybe other spiritual traditions would say. The whole game was just an illusion. The player was just an illusion. Everything, it's just a dream. And I've woken up from the dream. I have nothing to do with it. And the people inside the dream, what I called other peoples, they don't exist. It's just an illusion that I'm talking to 13 other people here on Zoom. You don't exist in the first place. Even this person here, I don't know what he's doing. It seems that he's talking, but I don't know who Muho is. I'm not Muho. That's not Zen. In Zen, you return to the game. You don't call it an illusion, or if you call this illusionary world an illusion, then enlightenment is an illusion as well. Or if you say enlightenment is real, then illusion, the dream, is real as well. You return to the game, you take people's sorrows, you take people's suffering seriously. And if you understand that your suffering stems from being absorbed by the game, you understand that other people's suffering also stems from there. So if we are more relaxed in our attitude playing the game, that will relieve my suffering as well as yours. And that's why I'm talking about Kodo Sawaki. In the last quote for today says, non-self. So if it's not about the player, this one player anymore, non-self means not turning your back on people. Taking a break from the game doesn't mean that you don't want to have to do anything with your life anymore. Somebody else is going to do the dishes for you. Somebody else is going to take care of your needs. But it means to return to your daily life and also to relate to others. You don't turn your back to other people. As Uchiyama Roshi says, if you want to know how far you got with your practice, maybe you practiced for 10 years, 20 years Zazen. If you want to know how far you got, just ask your family. And if your spouse or your children have the impression that ever since our father or our mother, the husband, the wife started with Zazen, they have less time for us, they turned our back on us, then it's not a good sign. if you really practice during this 10, 20, 30 years, that should show in that you don't turn your back on others. You have even more time for them. You look at them more closely. I think that's what Sawaki Roshi here says. Let me read it one last time. Non-self. Non-self means not turning your back on people. Okay, so much from my side. We still have time for questions or anything that you would like to share. Please feel welcome to do so. Now with this camera angle, it looks as if Sanderson had kind of strangled himself, but he's actually parachuting here. So don't worry, don't worry. He hasn't strangled himself. Any questions? Anything you would like to share? Nothing? Joseph is moving. Julian is raising his hand. So Julian first, please.
Thinking maybe you should ask Joseph how my practice is.
We can do that.
Maybe not. Maybe not. No, I was just going to say, you said at the start you find the silence easier than the word part of the Zoom. Yet your words are always very helpful. And I always think we mustn't be too tough on words as humans, because that's all we've got.
Yes.
My great Western philosophy hero, Wittgenstein, he set out to say, what could we say meaningfully in his early work? And he said, what we can't talk about, we have to be silent about.
Yeah.
And then he realized everything he was really interested in, ethics and art and philosophy, religion, was all in that area. Yeah. So his later work was all about language games, wasn't it? And, Zen is a particular kind of language game where we know that we can have contradiction and paradox and humor, and the rules are always changing. So I just wanted to say, I think you embody that very well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Free compliment this morning.
Okay, so Joseph, what do you think about the practice of your father?
I don't think we should make distinctions between good and bad practice, should we? That was a quote today, so I couldn't say.
I think answer.
I think Wittgenstein, he uses actually a game as an example of his the difficulty of defining words or coming up with a single definition of words. But anyway, that wasn't what I got up to say, so I don't really have anything to say there. No, I just wanted to ask if you could say about the difference between returning to the game in monastic setting versus returning to the game in a lay life setting, and if there's any difference between the two. And you were for many years obviously the abbot of a monastery, and now, as I understand it, you live kind of essentially in a sort of lay life-ish. So yeah, do you have anything to say about the difference between the game in a monastery versus in a lay life?
I think the difference is not so big as people usually imagine. It's not that you enter the monastery and then you don't have to worry anymore what you're gonna eat. But at least in Antaiji, as you're self-sufficient, you have to, well, returning to the game means you think in the spring how much vegetables we need in the autumn, what should we plant, what's the best season, how's the weather. Basically, you think about the same stuff that farmers think. It's just, so if you would ask, well, what's the difference? It's not about your personal profit at the end. It's about that everybody in the monastery should have enough. You worry about, I don't know, when it's leaking through the roof. How are we gonna repair the roof? It's not so much, at least from my feeling, it's not so much about so different from what you do in so-called normal society, secular life. I mean, one big difference is that everybody in the monastery, at least in theory, agrees that the aim is to change the game. You don't want to play, the game shouldn't be all about you. You all agree it's not me against you, but it's us together. While in normal society, it's a little bit different. Like it's agreed on, it's a competition. And of course, we also have to try to collaborate, but it's kind of their strategic allegiances. Probably the common sense in so-called normal society, it's a competition. There are winners and losers. So that makes it much more difficult compared to monastery to say, I'm totally fine with losing. Take anything from me. Because in the monastery, nobody would then take all. Of course, I mean, humans, in monastery, it's also human beings. So it might happen that people, well, how do you say, use your time, whatever. But it's in normal society, at one point you would say, hey, you can't take all because I need to pay my rent, I have a family I need to provide for, and so on and so on and so on. So living non-self in normal societies, yeah, almost impossible. Almost impossible. If you say it's not about my personal gains. At one point in normal society, you would have to say, yeah, sorry, but I need this for myself. And beyond that, I'm happy. I'm happy to share. I'm happy to play with you without thinking about points. And that probably is easier in the monastery. It's easier. You have the support of the Sangha. I don't know if that answers your question.
It wasn't really an exact question I had. It was just
Yeah.
something I wanted you to speak about. So that was all.
Anything else you would like to ask or share? Chris, please.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that because I was surprised by what you just said. But first of all, I thought it was great someone brought up Wittgenstein because in the Japanese group, you always talked about Wittgenstein, but I don't remember anyone bringing that up in this group. So yeah, there's it's very interesting, the similarities to what we talk about in this group. But you just said you thought it's did you say it's not possible to totally quit the game when living in society? Because I was surprised if that's what you said.
Well, if you totally quit the game, like, well, it depends on what we understand, but if it means that whenever you meet a beggar on the street, you give them everything that's on your purse, you wouldn't get home because you have no money to pay for the ticket home. So, while in the monastery you don't have to worry about paying the rent because you don't pay the rent. Of course, you have to worry about the weather, and of course, in the monastery, of course, sometimes there was this question like during a session when we were supposed to meditate for only 5 days, but then people would, not people, wild boars or deer would come to eat the rice or the pumpkins, whatever. And usually then one person would call the others and say, please help, we need to repair the electric fence. We need to take a break from Zazen, or we need to harvest rice before the boar eat them all. And other people, including myself when I was young, would say, but didn't we come here together to take a break from this game, worrying about what to eat tomorrow? Let's sit for these 5 days, and if the boars eat everything, well, we can share it with the boars and we can still go begging in town. But then usually when you stay there longer, you understand that's a pretty irresponsible way of thinking, that doing Zazen is more important than protecting the rice fields. So at one point you also get to this point that, okay, we're not playing the game, it's not about game or loss, but we need to at least, harvest what we need for the winter. We can't share it all with the boars. Sorry to the boars, but maybe please you can find some roots also in the mountain. And in normal society, so that would say that even in the monastery, in an antaiji setting, it's not completely, it's impossible to completely say, it's not about ourselves, please, the boars, you are invited to come and eat whatever you want. And if there's something left over, we will sustain ourselves on that. So even in antaiji, you build electric fences, you try to protect the fields from wild animals. And in normal society, like one radical form of people who try to do that, quit the game completely. I've never been to India, but probably India, the sadhus also, people that are completely naked and they don't work. They would just live on the donations by others. That would be kind of a radical form of doing that, completely quitting the game, not worrying about money or anything else, not about worrying about clothing, of course, not trying to attract, how do you say, a possible spouse and raising a family. But as soon as you want to have your flat, you want to have some clothes, even if it's not super fashionable clothes, and you want to raise a family, I think there's no other choice than to participate in the game and also trying to collect a certain amount of points for yourself. And as I said, even antaiji, you have to somehow play the agricultural game and try to protect yourself against other living beings like wild boars that are also interested. They also find that the pumpkins are very delicious in the autumn. But at one point you have to say, sorry, but we need this for ourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought that Zen, kind of balances living in the real world, living in the mundane world, and having the ideal of this emptiness. And but what you said, I think it still shows, there is a middle ground, but it's still that you still take it very seriously to live close to quitting the game as much as you can. So I think it's nice to see that you do take, like Zen monks probably still take that very seriously. It's still a little bit extreme, which I think is good. Thank you.
I mean, of course you take it seriously, because I mean, and when I say take it seriously, you mean and I mean quitting the game seriously. Because the more you allow yourself to be sucked up by the game, the more you suffer, of course. The more you suffer from, I don't have as much as he or she has. And the more serious you take being, how do you say, not absorbed by that, the more space there's for you to live, the more space there's to breathe for you, the more enjoyable your life becomes. So yeah, of course we take, or at least I take it serious, and I think people at antaiji, most people that are into Zen take it serious. Any other questions you have? Tanya, please, and after that, Kinza.
I like the metaphor of quitting the game and gaining the points. And when I think of points, I think of gaining money or getting likes or having a big house or big car or something.
Yes.
But I think in my case, maybe it's more the female way. It's more like being loved or being seen.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know if the metaphor of the game fits so well with this kind of gaining points. I'm not quite clear in my mind. Maybe do you have another idea, or Kenza has, or anyone else?
Well, collecting points in the form of money and collecting points in the form of likes or collecting points in the form of being loved by others, of course it's different, but I think at the core it's the same game. And we have, I don't know if it's female and male thing, maybe also, but collecting points in the form of gaining a PhD degree, whatever. Or even like bodhisattva ideal, and I talk about that, and it's important to help others, but even that can turn into this game. How many people I have helped. Look at how much good I have done for the world. That can also turn into this game. You don't do it for any personal profit, you don't do it for the money, but you do it to be seen, or maybe even only for yourself, that you, when you look in the mirror, have the idea, oh, I'm looking at a beautiful bodhisattva there. And at that point, of course, it's also a game. So, and I think that happens actually quite a lot of times, even when you look at Zen groups and they, how do you say, do a lot of PR at how, look at what we do to help homeless people, which of course is a good thing. It's a good thing to help people that need help, but unconsciously we turn even that into a game. Hey, look at how many people I'm helping there. Hey, look how happy they are now. So what you say, it's true. It's not only these obvious things about collecting money, building a big house, driving in a fast car, having a sexy wife, whatever. There are much more subtle ways that make it easy for ourselves to pretend, oh no, I'm not playing the game. I'm actually one of those who are improving the game. I'm one of the bodhisattva types. I'm making it more enjoyable for everybody. But in reality, exactly that's now the game for me. So yeah, we have to be very careful, or well, ask ourselves, isn't that what I call quitting the game actually a new form of a game that I'm playing there?
Yeah. I just talked about that with my husband on the breakfast table. That maybe the family suffers because I'm so in a hurry to get everything done to be ready for Zazen. And I think that's not the point. So yes, we have to be careful, always careful, and yeah, I'm happy to realize. Took me some time, maybe. I need Zazen so much to be relaxed, to be better than the other people that just playing the game. Huh? And I'm so well known, or no, just so wise and do the right thing, the right stuff. So, or the same thing in another form, another way of playing the game. Yeah, it's subtle, because I think it feels like you can't come away from the game if you want to come away from the game. I think there's no way of getting away from the game if you want it.
Yeah, and sometimes taking a break from the game can also mean taking a break from the practice. You say, I'm sitting every morning 30 minutes, but sometimes taking a break from the game means that you skip those 30 minutes and use them for something else. Kenza, you also raised your hand.
I was just thinking sometime quitting the game for me, or the way I see it, is very simple things. I'll just give you a personal example actually from yesterday. Um, I, I'm going to Switzerland next week, and then a friend is going to Belgium next week. And we both said that we'll bring chocolate. So another person said, oh, there's going to be a chocolate competition to see which chocolate is best. So for me, that is the game. So I had to say, with humility and trying not to appear too wise, as Tanya said, I think she's correct. Like, to try to say things to help in a way. I said, no, I mean, we'll have the Swiss chocolate and enjoy it as Swiss chocolate. And we'll have the Belgium chocolate and enjoy it as Belgium chocolate. So for me, this is also quitting the game. Because as you said, like society tends to turn everything into a competition and a contest, and that was everybody's first reaction about chocolate. So it's also kind of looking at the very simple thing and not making it, about oneself, I think.
Yes, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to share or ask? André, please.
When you were talking about life in the monastery and comparing it with the life in the, you call it normal life, but I think it's the opposite. It feels more normal and naturally what I learned from your books and what you say or tell about life in a monastery. It's much more naturally to play the game, to tell the animals, the wild deer, not to eat your food. This is very basic to the ground. It's not. I don't think it's the game because you don't try to get more food than the animals. You are not in a competition with the wild deer. So this feels for me more natural. Then I think for us humans, it's usually naturally if we were not somehow brainwashed by society and education. If we see a beggar who needs something to eat or a roof, we would go to help if he would be naturally, because it's another human. It's one of us. But it's more naturally to say, okay, the animals should my my food like this, and so this normal society, the life in normal society, fits much more unnormal than life in monastery, as you describe it. And another thing is in India, the sadhus also live in great sanghas. They are also in great structure that help them, and they help each other too. It's you can compare it a little bit. It just looks more radical from the outside, but I think the radical life is the life in the so-called normal society, collecting points on bank accounts and that stuff.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the idea of the monastery. It's not to create a artificial kind of environment, but just as you said, the idea is that's actually the most natural way to play the game in a playful way. It's just that from the perspective of the so-called normal world, it's something strange that they do there in the monastery. Okay, it's already 9:10, so I would like to thank you. If you like, come back next week. Thank you very much to Schwensand for hosting us here. Next week it's gonna be the Japanese Hokyo Zammai, the precious mirror samadhi text. And of course 30 minutes of Zazen before that. So have a nice week. Thank you for coming and hopefully see you again. Shwen-san, if you could later send me a link. Today I don't have a recording. Thank you.